Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Irene Maslowski. I'm an adjunct professor at NYU and City College in New York City, and I am the current chair of the DEI committee for PRSA's Educators Academy. This year, IPR and EA rebranded the virtual discussion series Race in the PR Classroom to Diversity in the PR Classroom. This rebrand enables us to expand our conversations beyond race and address the challenges and opportunities in diversity, equity, and inclusion as they evolve for students and educators alike. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize our sponsor, the Moody College of Communications at the University of Texas at Austin. Thank you again for your continued support of our program. IPR and PRSA's Educators Academy have been partnering on this series since June of 2020. Today, we will have a discussion on the rich history of the Divine Nine in PR and communications. First, we welcome Carmela Glover, President of the Diversity Action Alliance and the Director of DEI at Page. In her Page role, she provides strategic direction for member and staff DEI initiatives. In partnership with the DAA board, she oversees the operations, programs, budget, and strategic plan of the Diversity Action Alliance. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Next, I'd like to introduce Eric Wingfield. Eric is a vice president at M Booth and M Booth Health, leading the firm's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. As a practitioner, his scope includes strategically counseling key corporate clients, adding depth in reputation management, public affairs, and issues and crisis management. He is a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. Next, Asia S. Jones is currently the Assistant Director for the National Association of Student Affairs Professionals and is a current PhD candidate. Asia has more than 17 years of progressively responsible experience in government and higher education. Asia is a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. Last but not least, Anitra Henry is the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at IPR and will serve as today's moderator. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Thank you all so much for being here today and sharing your personal experiences with everyone. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few housekeeping rules. This is a Q&A type format. To ask a question, please drop it into the chat or raise your virtual hand. Once you are called on, please remember to state your name and your organization. If you would like to ask a question anonymously, please type the message into the chat. The host will read the chat and will read your question aloud. Only the moderators can see your chat, so you will still remain anonymous. Today's session will be recorded and will be available for playback on Monday. Lastly, please remain respectful of our hosts and everyone who is on this call and mute yourselves unless, of course, you are asking a question or speaking. So thank you again. And with that, I will turn it over to Anitra.
Thank you, Irene, and thank you all for being here. And thank you, my guests, for being here. And before we begin, we want to really tie this into the history. It is Black History Month. And as you all know, or if you don't know, you're about to find out that members of the Divine Nine impact our lives every day. Our Vice President, Kamala Harris, is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. The Minority Speaker of the House, Hakeem Jeffries, is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And throughout history, There are some key figures that we find, like Moss Kendricks in PR and comms in related industries such as marketing, Moss Kendricks, John H. Johnson, Jesse Lewis. They're all members of Alpha Phi Alpha, and Baynard Rustin, who's planned the March on Washington, who's a member of Omega Psi Phi. What I want to do is start by asking our panelists to each give us a brief history of their fraternity or sorority. And we're going to go a little bit out of order. I'm going to start by talking about my sorority, which is Delta Sigma Theta. And it was founded in 1913 by 22 collegiate young women at Howard University who cared deeply about scholarship, public service, and sisterhood. And so they decided to found the sorority. So I'm going to start with Carmela. Tell us about AKA. Give us a brief history of Alpha Kappa Alpha.
Sure. Alpha Kappa Alpha was also founded at Howard University on January 15th, 1908 by 20 women, 4 of which were incorporators of the organization a few years later. So we are the first Black Greek letter organization for women, or a part of the Divine Nine at the very least. What other questions did you have about it? So and the relevance of it today is that, we're still addressing the issues of civil rights, which we call social justice now. And that was the importance of it back then, when there was still a bit of segregation in that Black people had to go to separate universities and colleges. So that's a brief history. I don't want to take up too much time. You gave a brief history too.
Great. Eric, I'm going to kick it to you because I know you have a rich history at Alpha Phi Alpha. So tell us about it.
Of course I do. So good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much to the IPR for having me and hosting this important conversation. So yes, I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, founded on Tuesday, December 4th, 1906. We were founded by 7 men who we affectionately call our jewels, who helped really pave the way for not only Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, but we are also the first intercollegiate Black male fraternity, a first of its kind. Founded on the campus of Cornell University. And so similarly to Carmela's, Alpha Phi Alpha was founded to create space for men who look like you and I, people who look like you and I, who didn't have the opportunity or the resources to be able to succeed on the campus, because of course the environment was not made for us. And so in the entrepreneurial spirit, they got together and formed this club, and it later became a fraternity, to really make sure that we had a space we could not only pave the way in the classroom, but really do it everywhere in every facet and the things that we do day to day. This is a brief history about Alpha Phi Alpha.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric. Asia, tell us about the rich history of Sigma Gamma Rho.
Well, we're excited because we're the babies of the crew, and so we just turned 100 just a few days ago. But Sigma Gamma Rho was founded and we're the only sorority that wasn't founded at Howard, actually. We were founded at Indianapolis, Indiana, during the time, of course, during a huge movement where there weren't a lot of Black folks on campus, by 7 educators. They were 7 school teachers that found that education was needed in that area that they were in. And so the principles of our sorority were really greater service, greater progress. If you can't greater serve somebody, then you can't have greater progress. And that's just, and I believe that for all of our organizations. We all collectively are in different organizations, but collectively we are serving people at a higher level. And that's what the founders of Sigma Gamma Rho were thinking when they created our beautiful organization in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Awesome. I do want to make sure that we give a little bit about the other organizations who aren't represented on today's episode. So in 1911, collegiate men at Indiana University founded Kappa Alpha Psi, and they were dedicated all about achievement. In 1911, at Howard University, Omega Psi Phi was founded by collegiates dedicated to scholarship, manhood, and perseverance. In 1914, also at Howard University, Phi Beta Sigma was founded by 3 collegiate men. In 1920, at Howard University, 5 collegiate women founded Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And in 1963, at Morgan State, 12 collegiate men founded Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. So that rounds out the Divine Nine. And while we have us representing our particular organizations today, it is important to know that there are 9 historically, typically Black Greek letter organizations that we'll be talking about that have a similar history. And you can hear that through where they were founded, around the time that they were founded, and the purpose and the tenets of their founding. So I want to ask each of you, and Eric, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what attracted you to your chosen fraternity?
Sure thing. Yeah. So for me, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, brothers of this organization, we're leaders, right? We're leaders in every definition of the word. And that's something that I've always embodied in my life as well. And so there are definitely attributes of the organization that connected directly to me that I'd embodied in my own self. And there was a natural connection. And when I honestly and truly did the research, understood more about like how all the other fraternities operated and who they were, this is the organization that spoke the most to me. And I went in thinking I knew all I needed to know about this fraternity, but I learned very quickly into the journey becoming a member is that I didn't know not nearly enough. And so I went through understanding intimately who we are, what we're about, and how do we show up in the world, right? And we often show up, you see alpha men at the very tops of organizations, at the very tops of the highest offices in politics, really paving the way and at the forefront of really being game changers in any industry, any field. And that is honestly and truly the aims and exactly how I saw my life in this current field in communications as somebody who wanted to be a pioneer. And so a lot of that alignment and that personal understanding of what the organization is, what it's about, and how it aligns to myself personally, that's what really carried me and brought me through, and essentially how I live my life every day as an alpha man.
Awesome. Thank you. Asia, tell us about what attracted you to Sigma Gamma Rho.
So I'm from Utah originally, born and raised. So let me just clear up 2 questions. Yes, there are African American and Black folks in Utah. There are 10 left because I have left. Just joking. But I was on a predominantly white campus I'm in Utah, and I actually had never heard anything about sororities or fraternities ever in my life. But I remember being on campus one day in the middle of the winter, and there were some Black girls I had never seen on campus before, number one, and they were outside talking about breast cancer awareness in the middle of a snowstorm. And I'm like, why are they outside in the snowstorm? And so I just saw that they had this tenacity to be out in a snowstorm talking about awareness that was affecting the Black community was the first thing that I saw. The second thing, as I did my research on the organization, I always knew that I would be in education somehow in some capacity. So it was just kind of a natural fit. The difference between my campus and most other campuses, we didn't have all 4 of the sororities. So we had 2 actually, and we had Delta Sigma Theta and Sigma Gamma Rho, but Delta Sigma Theta wasn't even at our campus. It was at the University of Utah, which was 50 minutes from our campus. And so when all my best friends were actually members of Delta Sigma Theta at the time. And so we go back and forth about it because they're like, you traded us. And I'm like, no, I never traded you. I went to where my heart was at and what was a fit for me and where I found myself that I best fit at. And so it was that moment that I knew that when I saw those girls outside in the snowstorm, not worried about their hair, not worried about anything, but giving awareness to the Black community on a predominantly white campus, I was sold from that moment before. And then I'm a dancer, and they started doing strolls, and I was like, oh, this is me right here. Like I can stroll and bring awareness to people, like perfect fit for me. And so that's what initially drew me in. And I would say that because I came from a family that wasn't a traditional family, I had no big sisters. I didn't have that from my family. And they really taught me what sisterhood looked like and what family looked like because I didn't have that from where I came from. I was a kid on a college campus whose mom was in prison at the time I went to college. And these people came in and took me in as their little sister helped me meet their moms, and their moms became my mom. And so that's what really drew me into the organization.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Aisha. Carmela, tell
Yes.
us how the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha wooed you into their sorority.
Yes. Well, I mean, for me, I grew up around women who were leaders in my community that AKAs, right? There and Deltas as well. But I think those that resonated with me most were AKAs. Even the purpose behind AKA is service to all mankind, although many times our initiatives are focused on the Black community. Our service is to all mankind. Our purpose is really rooted in academia and ethics, and in enhancing women in general, enhancing the status of women and making sure that women have a prominent role and equality. So Black women, yes, but women in general and those who are underserved. So also being the original organization, the founders of AKA were visionaries. They were able to see this for women, where at the time it only existed for men. And it was influenced a little bit by what we call Lyle Love, where there's a member of Alpha Phi Alpha who joined at Howard, which was the beta chapter. And at that time, he was dating and eventually married one of the founders of our organization. So the histories are really tied together, and just being the original, the pioneer, the trailblazer, very similar to what Eric said, and having roots in service to all mankind and maintaining the social stature of women, and the sisterhood of collegiate women was really, really important to me. My grandmother was also a Delta as well, but again, it was what was in my heart. To be an AKA, women, not just in my present life in my local community, but Rosa Parks, Mae Jemison, one of the women who was featured in the Hidden Figures movie. They're all leaders and trailblazers and just unique, and able to provide something different. And that really attracted me to the organization.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to share with you all a little bit about my journey to Delta Land, as we call it. I pledged undergrad at an HBCU, Savannah State University. If you come to DPRC, you all know that I'm a big HBCU advocate. I love my school and I love my sorority. I do have a big sister who went to Spelman, and we come from a family of overachievers. So my sister was definitely blazing a trail for me. And she was just out in high school winning all of these different awards and scholarships. And Delta Sigma Theta was the first to award her a scholarship. And that's when my interest got piqued. My sister goes off to school, we're 4 years apart. So she's, as I'm a freshman in high school, she's a freshman in college. And so when I'm a freshman in college, she's graduated and getting ready to go to medical school. My sister wasn't afforded the opportunity to pledge Delta because it didn't line up with the work that she was doing and them being available to receive new members on campus. So for me, it was a way within my family to differentiate myself from my sister. But when I first got turned on to Delta Sigma Theta by them awarding my sister the scholarship, I got to know a lot of the women who were in the organization, and they were leaders. And the thing that stood out to me were they were definitely dedicated to community service. And that is something that my mom and dad both instilled in us as kids. Every spring, we were responsible for cleaning out our rooms, our old clothes, our old shoes, our old toys, and you had to donate them. And it wasn't just put them in a box and it went somewhere. We physically had to go places to see how it would impact other people. So that's one of the things, the tenets that definitely stuck out to me. And then when I got to Savannah State's campus, the friends that I made, I tend to navigate towards more of the women who were in my life were Deltas. My favorite professor, however, was an AKA. So Divine Nine is throughout my family and throughout my career path as well. So that's just a little bit about my journey. So I want to ask you all, when I think about my journey and the first time I had a chance to sit in a business meeting, it was the time after I crossed over. And there's so many different things that I've learned by being a member of Delta Sigma Theta, from the first business meeting I got a chance to be in up until today. What have you learned from being a member that helps you in your professional life and your personal life? And Asia, I'm going to have you start this one.
Sorry about that. My professional life. What I've really learned is emotional intelligence. I think that my sorority and my friends in other organizations have really taught me the importance of emotional intelligence, to make sure that I have seats at different tables. I think about when I came to college in particular, I didn't have any type of emotional intelligence. One, I was 17 years old, so that's part of the thing or whatever. I'm part of that. But I think that as I've grown, learning how to use my words so that my words will be effective to create change. And I believe that in my professional life, that's what my organization has taught me. As you talked about the business meeting, when I went to my first sorority meeting, I'm like, what are these rules of order? What are we talking about? Why you can't just say what you want to say when you want to say it? Da, 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 da. You know, that's what I thought you had to do. But learning that doing it in that capacity would take me from some seats from some tables, and that I would become a menu versus being the menu, right? And so, or not having a seat at that table. And so I really appreciate the fact that people have taken time within my organization to even teach me how to dress. Like, I mean, I wore saggy pants and a pair of Jordans. I'm still kind of similar, not the saggy pants, but a pair of Jordans. I'm going to rock them anytime I can, right? But I learned how to show up in different spaces with my clothing, with my dress, with even makeup. Like, I look at pictures of myself and I'm like, I look like a circus clown. And I had a sorority sister pull me to the side and was like, yo, the makeup's not working for you. And I don't know why somebody hasn't told you. And at first, I'll be honest, my feelings were a little hurt. But I think that feedback, correction is direction, and feedback is love. If someone's providing you that correction and that direction, that means they love you and want to see you at a higher capacity. And I think those are the things that I've learned in my professional career to get me at different seats at different tables, and to be able to use my voice when I'm using it in regard to be able to be passionate about what I want to create change, but to have the emotional intelligence to how to explain that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much. That makes a lot of sense. Eric, what about you? What has Phi Alpha taught you that you take with you and use in your everyday life as a professional and in your personal life?
Sure. I know that Phi Alpha taught me that a very valuable lesson that I think a lot of people underestimate is that you can't do it all on your own, right? So I am an only child from a single parent home. It's just me and my mom. Anybody who knows me knows that I have a very, very, very deep love, respect, and appreciation and honor for my mother. And also, I'm also a very independent person. Take that what you will. And I believe that I can be self-sufficient because for so long, it's just been her and I. When I became a member of Alpha, we talk about, in one of our poems, we have this reference called this is the school of the better making of men, symbolizing that you already demonstrate greatness coming into the fraternity, but that as you're coming into the organization, they're going to add to you. They're going to figure out how they're going to give you more to make you even better, iron sharpening iron. But in doing that, they're going to show you what it means to not only be vulnerable, but to really trust and have brothers, identify what it is to be a brother, a good brother of the organization. And in being a good brother of the organization, you have to understand that, you are a great person, but you don't have to do it. You can be great, and you're going to be greater as a community and as a collective. And every day of my life, I am learning and I'm experiencing how much this is one of the best decisions I've made in my life, is becoming a member of this organization, because no matter where I go or how high I ascend in my career and in my life, there is always an Alpha brother, literally a phone call away, to help me become even better than what I thought I was in that present moment. Right before this call, some of my brothers knew I was coming on to speak on this panel. They was like, before you go on this call, we're going to pray with you. and we want to make sure you have everything you need and you're feeling confident, you're feeling good. And like, that's just like, you never know what you need until you coming up to that moment where you're getting ready to level up or do something that's a little out of your comfort zone, when your brothers come to say, you know what, we got you. And that in itself is the lesson that I would say is the most valuable thing I've learned, is that, you know, growing up as a kid, it's not just you and mom. Or even like knowing that, you know, it's something where if I'm not able to get to my mom because she's now in Miami, I'm now in New York, I can literally call up any of my bros from the Miami chapter and say, hey, my mom needs X, Y, and Z. Can you help her out? Without a question, without a doubt, I know that she's taken care of. And it's that assurity, that community, and that love is what I always take with me and I cherish. And I tell anybody considering the organization, whether it's my beloved fraternity or any other organization, think about not only what are you going to get out of the organization, think about what are you going to also put in as well, and how are you going to represent and how are you going to demonstrate those values, those beliefs of it as well.
Eric, that is powerful. Thank you for that share. Carmela, you and I have to follow that. So I'm gonna
I know, right? No, and heavy on the best decision made in your life, right? That I would say it's the same for me. And I second both what Asia and Eric said on both of their points. And I would add that for me, I pledged the organization at 19, and the organization operates like a business. Neither of my parents come from corporate America or the corporate world. And I was able to really sharpen my skills as a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So as Asia mentioned, you learn Robert's Rules of Order and you think like nobody uses this, right? And then you join professional organizations when you graduate from college and realize you have a leg up on those who may have never used Robert's Rules of Order and may not be familiar with it. You know how to budget, you know how to operate in an executive committee, which is something that typically you won't get in any corporate ladder until you get higher up in your career. So that was really empowering for me, being that I wanted to be, in business. My mother was an educator, my father was in the military, and I just didn't have the connections that I needed until I joined the organization. I didn't have the skills that I needed until I joined the organization. The other thing I would say I got out of it was being able to press through tough times. I mean, in PR, right, especially if you're working in the agency setting or you're doing some type of consulting, you are tired all the time. It is a busy life, and it's a lifestyle that's not for everyone. But I will say that being a part of the organization early on, they prepared you for pressing through, for being able to service your community in a way that was high quality and still operate in school and in your work. And so I was a chemical engineering major when I pledged, and it was very difficult for me to maintain my schoolwork and my Alpha Kappa Alpha service and learning all of the history and information that I needed to learn. I was up late nights, but everything that has happened to me in my life, I've said, well, you know what, I can do this. If I could have done that at 19 years old and was able to multitask and juggle multiple things and do well at them with the community. I also grew up with 4 brothers. I had no sisters. And, I always went to predominantly white institutions and never felt a sense of someone understanding my path specifically because of the unique barriers that women of color have in competing at school, for being top 10 in your class and AP classes up to college. And even in the workforce, there's still a disadvantage and disproportionate barriers for marginalized people. And I'm able to power through that because I was prepared for that. I did not go to an HBCU and needed that support throughout college. So it really meant a lot to me, and it continues to serve me as much as I serve it in my life.
That's awesome. That is very powerful as well. For me, in my professional life and in my personal life, the biggest thing that I think I take away, and there are many, is how to listen. When you're a member of a sorority, you have so many different strong personalities because you're dealing with the cream of the crop. The recruitment, who is attracted to the sorority and who's attracted to the fraternity, and who even gets to go through the process to be let in to join, is the cream of the crop. they are the leaders in their class sections. They are the leaders, and they typically have been in their families and other parts of their life, whether they're pledging undergrad or grad chapters. They're leaders. They're just naturally that. So they also have a lot of opinions and a lot to say, which is why we have Robert's Rules of Orders in our organizations. And being a part of that, being very strong-willed and very opinionated, you often, especially at 19, 20 years old, like when I pledged, I was 20, I wasn't really accustomed to listening to too many people because, you know, you're coming off of, now I'm a young adult and I'm out of the house and I don't have to listen to my mom and dad anymore. I've got this little bit of freedom. Going into a sorority and going into these chapter meetings and coming together to serve our community, I had to learn how to listen without prejudice, to put my own thoughts about something aside, about what I was firmly believing was right all the time. I had to put that aside and listen to my sorority sisters who might have been a little bit older or just had a different experience. And that bleeds over into my personal life as well. You have to learn how to listen to people, and there may be something, there's a lesson there for you. There's always something there for you. So that's the biggest thing that I take away from being a part of my sorority, because there's a lot of listening that I do as well as talking. But with that being said, you know, we've talked about me pledging at an HBCU undergrad, Carmela pledging, and Asia pledging undergrad, and Eric, I know you pledged grad chapter, and there's some nuances and some differences to those things. But one of the things about the Divine Nine as a whole is it's a lifetime commitment. So I want to ask you all, what does that mean to you? And Asia, I'm going to start with you again on this one. What does lifetime commitment mean to you? What does it look like for you?
I mean, what it means to me is that it's something that I decided to do when I was only 16 and a half years old when I went to college. And so by the time I was pledging, I was only a 17-year-old person. And I thought at first, oh yeah, it is a lifetime commitment, but I'm just going to do this for this 4 years of school. And then after that, I'm going to take me a good break. But when I tried to take a break, I couldn't get away from the break because I realized that my voice and what I needed needs to always be there. And especially because I'm very passionate about mentoring people behind me, because if I choose to be an infinite person, which I choose to be, then I teach people beyond me. And I don't do that if I stop at some point. So that means there's a whole bunch of people that have to come behind me, not necessarily even joining my organization, but there's people that I have to mentor that I will only reach through my lifetime commitment, right? And so that lifetime commitment means it's no different from that. I don't want to say that marriage is great or anything like that, but you've made a determination that you're gonna weather a storm. Being in a sorority is not always easy, and I think you see lots of pictures where it looks fun, but when you're dealing with other humans, that's not always fun, you know, because some humans aren't user friendly. I used to use user friendly when they're not so nice, right? But what I understand my lifetime commitment means that I will serve people until the day I get to leave this earth. And so I do that through my lifetime commitment, through my organization and other things that I do in life. And so the lifetime commitment is something that I'm committed to regardless, you know, through good and bad, and realizing that my lifetime commitment allows somebody else to be freed from the chains that they're in. And so that's how I look at it from a lifetime commitment standpoint.
Awesome. Carmela, what does it look
Agreed.
like? What does it feel like to you, lifetime commitment?
Yeah, so like Asia, I cannot get away from it, you know, and really had no desire to. The closest people to me in my life, the godmoms to my children, the bridesmaids in my wedding, those who are there for me when I need it, or there for my family when I need it, right? For me, that already signifies a lifetime commitment. I remain financially active because I like to mentor the next generation, because in order to perpetuate our organizations, we need to maintain membership for the rest of our life. And there's an importance behind these organizations even today. While in the early 20th century, in the 1900s, it was around civil rights. We still face a lot of the same issues. They look different today, but it's important that we sustain the organization. And in order for it to be sustained, the organization needs to continue beyond the collegiate experience. There needs to be a business element that not only helps the local community and the local university communities, but our society at large. And so for me, that is a lifetime commitment to always reach back. And not all of my mentees are undergraduates. Some of them are high school students who are not yet in college. Some of them are professionals who are earlier in their career. And I do that under the auspices of AKA, but again, that is service to all mankind. The lifetime commitment for me is that, I'm always going to be of service and to perpetuate the organization and its goodwill, but also it has become a part of me. It's in my heart, and it's something that, I'm never going to let go of. You never tire of it. You might tire of some of the people, you might tire of the work sometimes, but it's something that's greater than ourselves. It's being a part of something that's not just about you as an individual. And it allows me to make sure that I'm still connected to the most important things in our community.
Eric.
Sure. I think I double click, endorse, definitely say everything that Asia and Carmela has shared, because the reality is for the African American community, these organizations are definitely pillars in our culture, but also have a very good place in setting examples for the next generation to be able to see and imagine what is it like to be in be a certain type of professional, right? So a lot of times the folks who are African American in the community oftentimes are members of one of the Divine Nine organizations, and that's the first experience that children have with a professional, right? And so our call, our service spans far beyond the collegiate experience because, for example, Alpha by Alpha, our mission in itself is really around developing leaders, promoting brotherhood, and then also while providing service and advocacy to communities as a whole. And so when you think about what that mission is, that is not just bound by the collegiate experience. That is definitely being something that you have to embody and live out every day. And so in being that example and being that pillar and being at the forefront, leading not only the different civic issues, but also business issues, you are going to find members of our organizations at the helm. For example, Roland Martin. Everybody knows Roland Martin and how impactful he is in the media landscape. He is a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha. Kim Godwin, the president of ABC News, the world's largest news organization right now. She's a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. We talked about different elected leaders who are members of other organizations, right? So you think about just key influential African Americans who are in the media, who are pioneering. Take a look at their bio, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to find some Greek affiliation, and all because our organizations and our brotherhoods and our sisterhoods are set up to foster this type of spirit, to foster that, and also we all continue to work together to figure out how do we leverage resources, how do we support each other to continue to advance the causes of our race.
Anitra, if I could just add a little bit to the importance of continuing this beyond the undergraduate experience, or even as a grad, just continuing it throughout your life. I want to talk about power a little bit, because as a college student, you get the college experience, and you protest, you advocate for your communities, things like that. Once you become a contributing member of society, you're a professional and you have a lot more power, specifically if you grow to the levels of those that Eric just mentioned, right? To the level of Kamala Harris, right? You have a lot more power and influence to really shape the world and the future. And I think about the initiatives that we have on the graduate level, and they are about economic wealth. They are about empowering our families. They're about environmental health, right? They're very relevant things that not only are, as our organization, talking about, but the world's leaders, chief communications officers, they're ESG, they're talking about the environment, they're talking about social impact. And as an undergrad, you can do so much right? You know, as undergrads, we're typically broke and, you know, we're doing our community service and volunteering. But once you have more resources and more power, AKA just started a credit union for its members. It's as a way to build economic wealth. There's a real wealth gap in our society, and this is their way of contributing to that. You can't necessarily do that as a college student. And so maintaining lifetime commitment as a collective is important. And I agree with Eric that as D9 organizations, as Divine Nine organizations, we do have a forum where we come together and say, let's pool resources. Let's make sure that we're supporting all of the other organizations that are doing something great and that we can find a way to push forward.
Awesome, Carmela. Thank you for sure for calling that out, because it is about just so many things that all of you touched on about the lifetime commitment and what it means to continue this on past us. And for me, a big part of that is giving back through mentorship and, you know, creating legacy. Each of our sororities and fraternities have a rich legacy, and we talk about those in history, but we're creating history by sitting on this panel and sharing what we're doing, where you guys have gotten to in your careers and the people that you influence as well. So thank you all for sharing that. One of the things that in our conversation, we talked about other people hear us and we affectionately call each other soror or brother, or when I see an Omega, I may call him frat, right? Hey, frat, how you doing? Can we talk about that? What does it mean when we're using those terms of endearment with each other? Soror, brother, frat. Eric, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. Well, I think I alluded to it a little bit earlier, right? When I was giving the example about just what the lessons that I've learned about community. It's a community, right? It's a community, but it's one that transcends blood, if you will. Like there's just a very deep connection and because we're all bound together by a similar mission, a similar organ, and a similar purpose. And we have that alignment, and there's also a spirit, right? Each of our organizations has a spirit about ourselves that is very unique, and you're gathering men, in my instance, who are aligned of that spirit and share the embodiment of what it means to be a part of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So for me, when I say call somebody a brother, I mean to the very definition of the word. Like, you are somebody who I trust. You are somebody who can trust me. You are somebody who I'm going to advocate for. I'm going to be there for. But the beautiful thing about it is I don't necessarily have to know or have a huge background about you to call you brother, because but the sure fact we're bound together by Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And that in itself, because we come to an agreement, we've all gone through our journeys, and we are all found and been a part of this organization. And that in itself is credibility enough for the resources that I have to be open to you, and the resources that you have be open to me. And that is honestly that collective, that community experience where you're seeing, you know, it's not just one person. We're definitely better and bigger together.
Carmela, when you think about Kamala Harris and calling her soror, what comes up for you?
There is a bond there. There's a sense of pride in being a part of that person's life, a part of their network, without having ever met that person. You know, you are bound to the sisters that you chose, to the brothers that you chose, not because you were born to them and, you know, they're your flesh and blood, but because you choose to have the same ideals, to have the same underpinnings and foundations and beliefs. And oftentimes when we call each other soror or frat, for me, it's also out of deference, right? It's out of a respect. It's kind of like in our culture, someone who is older than you, you always call them Mr. or Mrs. by their last name, sir or ma'am or auntie, right? And it's a respect, and it's saying that, you know, I see you. I don't know if anybody saw the movie Avatar: Way of the Water, but they always say, I see you. And what it really means is, you know, I recognize that, you know, whatever differences we have, we are still bound by a commitment, by a collective commitment, and it's really a special thing. It identifies us and differentiates us from the other relationships we might have.
Asia,
Gosh,
anything to add?
they stole everything. That's tricky. They're so good. I appreciate everything that they've said, but I think along the same lines, there is this sense of pride saying, that's my soror, that's my sorority sister, you know. I was thinking about a few weeks ago, we inducted Fantasia, one of the first winners of America's Idol. And the sense of pride, because sometimes we allow honorary people to come into our organization and it's just a name and a face that's there, right? But the sense of pride that she has to become that she's this member, like in my 26 years of being in a sorority, I haven't seen an honorary member be so excited to the point that she decided that she's going to go back and get her college degree. And to call somebody my soror like that is just one of the most exciting things, because we had the capacity to create change in her mindset that she could go back to college. And there's this sense of pride of being able to call her soror. When I think about Hattie McDaniel, one of the first Oscar winners, becoming a Black woman, being one of the first persons to win an Oscar, there's a sense of pride that I can say, oh, that's my soror, right? Or when I think about, I got to meet this last week, one of our new sorors by the name of Tregear Wade, who's the sister of Dwayne Wade, the NBA player, and talking about her story of their life and that how she actually raised her brother because her mother couldn't be there in the capacity. And that's just so excited to see this familial piece that this sister took on the role of a mother for her brother. And I had that same experience in college because of my family situation. I had to take custody of my little brother when I was 19 years old and he was only 9. And my sorors helped me out. Like, these people that I joined an organization with helped me to get custody of my little brother. And it's not about the famous people also, it's about the people that were in my local chapter. And even greater than that, and even though Carmela and Anitra are in different organizations, they're still my sorors, because we're all in the divine 9, and they're still my sisters. And so that's what I think of when I think of the word soror, like this word that combines us with all the different intersectionalities of us, but brings us together as one.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And just a quick note, the way Asia and I connected was, as she mentioned, she's had a long-standing friendship with lots of Deltas, and my chapter president at the time, we did, was it coffee? And it was coffee and cupcakes, I think. No, it was a different program. See, we have so many different programs.
Cupcakes and conversations.
Cupcakes and conversations. Asia came to that and was just so warm that I never forgot her. And we constantly, when you're in a grad chapter in continuing service, when you're doing different things in your community, one of the biggest people that always come out and support are other members of the Divine 9. They're usually there to support you, to help you not only by buying tickets and showing up in attendance, but setting up stuff, putting away trash, just helping out in general. And so I love that you all each talked about just how the intersectionality is of what it means and how we all blend together. So
one more thing to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just to even show it at a bigger level, the last Cupcakes and Conversation that we did, it was one of the folks in Anitra's grad chapter that I worked with. And just a little piece of our story, when I first met this person, they weren't user-friendly at all. But I'm also that little gnat that's like, when somebody's not being user-friendly, that I just kind of keep talking to them anyway. And so I got on her nerves bad enough that we became friends. And I started saying, hey, I want to do this event because there's so much, the girls on the campus aren't getting along with each other. Like, step show time, let's talk all the trash, and stroll time, let's do that. But they, like, the girls on campus were fighting with each other, like literally fist fighting with each other. And I was like, we've got to figure out something where we have a conversation with these girls that we can be in a different organization, but we can still be sisterly towards each other. And so, long story short to that, we did it the first year, we did it the second year, but the third year, we got to invite all 4 of the national presidents to San Diego State campus. And we had over 2,000 people virtually that joined that conversation. And we had a conversation on the mental health of Black women in sororities. And all these 4 sorority presidents came through and talked about the mental capacity of when people have had a bad experience with the sorority and why they don't want to be a part of it. And these 4 national presidents came together to say, like, yeah, at the end of the day, we're in 4 different organizations, but we're doing the same work. We're all sisters here, and we got to talk about the mental health of the people that we're accepting and allowing to come into our organizations. We need to do a better check of who we're letting in, because we don't want to be letting these folks in that are going to cause mental problems to other people. And if there is somebody that's kind of questionable, let's work with them to get them healed. And so that's when I think about SOAR, those are the things I think about. I just wanted to add that piece. I apologize.
No, don't apologize. That's definitely great information to share, and just talking about how we all come together and how we support each other. And that's a part of networking, right? So the next question that I have for each of you is, has networking within your organization helped your career? And if so, how? Carmela, let's start with you.
Yes, 100%. I will say that every job role that I've had, as long as AKA Alpha Kappa Alpha was on my resume, there was somebody there who, even if they were not a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, they were a member of another Divine Nine organization, they advocated for me. And of course I had to show up and be strong, right? And prove my own and be a good employee, but it has helped me in my career as an undergrad, get interns. And I transitioned from being a career engineer for 10 years into communications. And a SOAR from my grad chapter asked me, you're really good at what you do. I know you want to make transition in your career. She was a member of the public relations committee. She said, do what I do. Come join the public relations committee. I loved it. I fell in love with public relations and communications, being a part of that, or being a part of that committee. And she ended up writing my recommendation letter for me to get accepted to NYU's graduate program so that I could have a foundation in communications and public relations. And that's how I started my career. As a member of PRSA and a leader in our chapter here in New York, I had the opportunity to go to PRSA's international conference. And every Black woman who was leading there, almost all of them were members of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and they're leaders in the national organization. They're not just on their chapter level. I feel like a small fish leading even though it's a huge chapter, I feel like a small fish leading the PRSA New York chapter, because these women are leading national committees and they're on the board, right? Felicia at Hampton is Dr. Felicia Blow. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, and she was the chair of PRSA the last year of the national organization. And so knowing these women and being connected, and we found, less than 6 degrees of separation just talking to each other and having never met until I came into this career. But I know that if ever I was to need support, to need an additional mentor, to need someone who understands the path that I'm walking as a Black woman, there are members of the Divine Nine within our industry's community. And many times when I meet someone new, especially if they're a Black woman or a Black man, and oftentimes there are members of our organizations who don't identify as Black, but they share our sorority ties or our fraternity ties, right? So the fraternities are historically Black, fraternities and sororities are historically Black, but there are members who are not always, don't always identify as Black. So for me, networking and being a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha has been crucial in my career.
Eric, has networking within your organization helped your career?
Absolutely, 1,000%. Carmela and her work in the Diversity Action Alliance, she knows this all too well, but there are very few African-American men in the industry of public relations, right? And then the higher you go up in the industry, the higher, like, so I'm a vice president now, the is less and less it becomes, right? And so there are a handful of alpha men who are in this industry: Chuck Wallington, Errol Crockfield up here in New York at Brunswick Partners. It's like, there's others, right? But there's only a handful of us. And so when things happen that in our industry, as you know, because oftentimes you're like, I'm the one, the only, excuse me, or one of the few in the room, it's always good to have that network of brothers, or you would say like, hey, I'm going through this for the first time. Have you been through this? Help me navigate. And they just able to like give me coaching, give me perspective, give me advice, and also correction as well. Like also when I am in the wrong and saying, you know what, Eric, you were out of line there. And like, and that's a beautiful thing to have in a space where you often feel like you're isolated or you're the only one of few in rooms. And I think that that is one benefit and one way Alpha has helped me. But also I would say that the confidence and the tenacity that you have to exude to be an alpha man is very, is also something I lean on heavy in this work and that I do as well. And so the networking piece, yes, because as well as I look up to people, there's also people who are junior to me and looking to come up. And I have to remember that the ladder has to also go back down so they can climb up and be able to be successful and reach those roles as well. So from a networking piece, yes, it's networking up, but also be able to network down and help the next generation climb up the ladder as well.
Very true, Eric. Asia.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. I was as an undergraduate, they brought Delta Airlines to our campus, and the goal of it was to have you had to have a 2.0 grade point average and work 12 credit hours. You had to be enrolled in 12 credit hours, and the goal of the program was to, once you get graduated from college, you would get transferred to corporate Delta Airlines and become a corporate member of the organization. And so I knew I wanted to do airport customer service because I like to people watch, and the best place to people watch is an airport, right? And so I got hired on in the airport at Salt Lake City, but they wanted to put me in a supervisor capacity. So I started applying for different jobs at different airports. And I actually ended up applying for a job at in Tallahassee, Florida. I had never even been outside of Utah, even though I was working for the airline. I hadn't just got to use my benefits yet. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this job in Tallahassee if they offer it to me. And the girl that was the hiring manager at the time was a member of Zeta Phi Beta. And so she said, this girl, and everybody that worked at the airport at the time was actually just, there was no Black folks that worked at the airport at the time. So she was like, oh, she has to be Black because she's a member of Sigma Gamma Rho. We need some diversity here. And the interesting thing, she's actually Ben Crump's sister. It's her sister is married to Ben Crump, and so Attorney Benjamin Crump. And so anyway, she gave me the job. My first HBCU experience that I ever got to have, they took me to a tailgating party that they were doing at FAMU. And so, yeah, I learned that. So that was really exciting. And so that's the first piece of it. And I become lifetime long friends with the Crump family through that one piece. But even like I have a consulting job now. The person who hired me is a member of Delta Sigma Theta. She's like, I needed a Black girl to come and do some work for me on some diversity initiatives. And she's like, I knew you had to be Black because you were a member of Sigma Gamma Rho, which is not, I was like, well, I could have been something else. She's like, no, I knew you were. And so those are the capacities, but I'm sitting on this panel because of my networking that I did at Cupcakes and Conversation with Anitra, and when I lost a job a few years ago, it was my sister Greeks who were like, I was like, y'all are overwhelming me with these job opportunities. They were finding me just piecemealing jobs for me so that I could get my rent paid during the time I was in transition. And so it was those pieces that helped me to get to some of the capacity of where I'm at now.
Awesome. Ditto to all that. Ditto to all that in my experience as well. I'm going to say one of my first bosses was a member of Phi Beta Sigma. So it's throughout. I think all of us share similar stories. And as we get ready to wrap up this session that has been so fun and I feel like so informative, I know several of you on the panel, and getting to know the rest of you and learning more about you by having this conversation. Let's take this back to the PR classroom. What should be taught about the Divine Nine in the PR classroom? Asia, since you are a member of SG Rho, I'm going to kick this one off with you. What do you think is what should be taught? What's missing? What may be there, but what's missing? What do you want to see taught?
I think the conversation that we're still alive and well. I think that that's one piece of it. I think the second piece of it is there's still a lot of folks that don't know about Black sororities and fraternities that are out there in this world. And I think we still need to, it's part of this history, this rich history, because as folks have stated, some of our members within our organizations were great civil rights motivators and movers and shakers. Black History Month, Carter G. Woodson was a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, why we have Black History Month today. You think about Martin Luther King, and his wife, members of Alpha Kappa Alpha and Alpha Phi Alpha, who were instrumental in the work that we do. We look at Roland Martin, who started his own news workstation. We're looking at, in current time, Lamont Hill, who's started another news station for Black folks. These are people that are within these organizations that are doing this work still to this day. As Carmela said, the older term of civil rights, but now social justice, that are creating diversity, equity, inclusion conversations within the work that they do. And if we don't teach that rich knowledge and continue to teach that rich knowledge or educate folks on the knowledge that's there, then how do we create change? These members of our organizations are doing a great work that is creating change for so many different people. And if we don't teach about it, then we lose the history of what's there. And if you don't have any history, you don't have any future.
Eric, thanks for sharing that, Asia. Deep. Eric, what do you have to add?
That is a hard one to follow, Anitra. So all I'm going to say is that, because I yes am, tactically, I think that in the classroom, we have to not discount the value of grassroots campaigns and how they've moved the needle and shifted in the paradigm of how policies have been approved, but how impact has been made. And yes, to everything that Asha said, the only thing I will add is also look at these organizations and seeing how we perfected the ability to launch grassroots campaigns and shift the paradigm on things such as elections, right? When you look at what happened in the 2020 election, look at how these organizations were mobilized and how they moved those members and moved communities around. And so that is one thing I would say is, like, tactically in the classroom, if you're looking for that thing to connect to from a communication standpoint, connect to the grassroots work that these organizations do.
Carmela, you're currently teaching, correct?
Yes.
And on top of all the other great work that you do, what should be taught about Divine Nine in the PR classroom? Close us out.
One of the aspects of the Divine Nine that I think is really insightful, I teach a power, privilege, and difference course to communicators, is helping people to understand, or students to understand, the diversity even within the Black community, right? There, not only are we not all the same, we're not a homogenous body, but we've all selected different organizations, but those organizations have done very similar communications those organizations do communications campaigns today. And as Eric referred to them as grassroots, but also some of them are grass top, right? But many of our organizational leaders are leaders, in society. They're very well respected, not just in the sorority, but in politics and in other places, in our other influential places in our communities. And they may not have traditionally been included in the stories of PR history, but the way Ivy Lee and Edward Bernays were. But we can teach about those who did publicity when they were not allowed to do publicity and continue to do it, right? Where they may not have the formal title. I know sometimes as practitioners, we get a little finicky about, like, well, what is PR and what other people think PR is and what it actually is. But there are real excellent examples of great communication and great public relations that impact not just the US, but impact the world because of these organizations. For my students, if they're a member of any organization, whether it be a D9 organization or another, or any type of club, especially if they have a leadership position, we review resumes, and some of them are grad students that still need that support. You put that on there because, like Asia said, someone will see that on there, and at a time where folks are looking to increase the diversity in their teams, they may not be able to tell that Ashley Smith is an African-American, but at the bottom, by seeing that she's a member of Zeta Phi Beta, they're like, okay, this is someone, not only does she have an excellent resume, but she seems to be a member of, the Black community. And so I think those are the things that we can advise our students, and exposing all of our students to that allows them to really understand how to level with each other from a humanity standpoint, regardless of what race or background they are.
Awesome. Carmela, Eric, Asia, thank you all for being here. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today for this session of Diversity in the PR Classroom focused on the rich history of the Divine Nine in PR and comms. Again, we would like to thank our partner, who is PRSA Educators Academy, as well as our sponsor, which is Moody College of Communications at University of Texas at Austin. I hope that you all will watch the replay because this was action-packed. There's so many great points in here. And I know we lost a few people because we're just a teeny tiny bit over time. So if you have an opportunity, please rewatch, please share, and also please join us for our next session, which will be on Thursday, March 30th, when we'll talk about women's history and some different things that are going on with women in PR and comms as well. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.